good product is not a one-hit wonder. It's actually a game of probability.
In the past, domestic products might have lacked strength, so people relied on channel power and brand power to compensate.
Selling products that are high quality and low price is not a matter of willingness, it's definitely a matter of capability.
If I had to choose the secret to low prices, it would be the factories and manufacturing industry.
We certainly need to learn, but what we actually learn is the methodology, not a one-to-one copy.
Last week, Shinyu and I went to Japan again. It seems that in recent years, the HeyGen team often goes to Japan. We not only go by ourselves, but also with our partners. This time, after Shinyu and I went again, we actually gained quite a lot. So today we want to take some time to sort through and review what we learned during this trip to Japan. Okay?
Sure, no problem.
Shinyu, from your experience, what do you think are the differences between our two trips?
I think there were some changes in the overall scope and the things we saw during the two trips. In March last year, everything we saw was very new, the variety of products was very high, and they were cheap and affordable, mainly focusing on phenomena. This time, we focused more on why these phenomena occur and how they might ultimately penetrate into the company's own competitiveness and barriers. We explored how they managed to offer such a wide variety of products at such low prices. Each trip seems to be more refined, and we learn a bit more each time. For example, product development is a common theme that I think everyone shares. It is mentioned from both the perspective of brand owners and retailers. Yes, so I think this time we invited people like the PB product developers from 7-Eleven and President Saito from Suntory. These individuals explain from scratch what successful cases they have, as well as their failures. I believe this provides a more micro and practical perspective to better understand the underlying logic and how to approach it. It helps everyone grasp what exactly the expectations for product development are, and whether it is more of a literary question or a mathematical one.
Yes, so just now we mentioned that the first thing we want to share is the secret to a good product that we learned this time. How do you develop a product? All right, please go ahead and tell us.
I think when it comes to product development, initially in the domestic market, people tend to treat it as a metaphysical question, wondering where exactly a good idea comes from. Why is it possible to consistently have so many good ideas? In fact, a good product is not a one-hit wonder. It's essentially a game of probability. Whether it's 7-Eleven or Suntory, the first thing is that the volume has to be large. I remember very clearly that Suntory's president Saito shared a perspective, saying that among the products in convenience stores, out of 1,000 products they develop, only 3 might survive. I think at the time, this 3 out of 1,000 really struck me. Everyone needs to take small steps to try, iterate, and fail, and only then can they succeed. This process comes with an expectation of probability. I believe this is a very important takeaway for me.
Actually, we all used to think, I want to provide everyone with a good product. Each person is dedicated to each item, and I believe everyone has put in a lot of effort and dedication. So when launching a product, we hope that consumers will like it and that our channels will be motivated to sell it. So everyone might feel that the product is the culmination of their life's work. But I also remember very clearly that President Saito said, this is mostly about failures and very, very few successes. This actually really challenged my understanding, right? Or today, a good product should actually be what remains, what emerges, what is tested and selected through countless trials. So at this point, I feel more at ease, realizing that being a big company doesn't necessarily mean having many advantages or a higher success rate. We always think about creating a super single product, but in reality, it's all an iterative process with a lot of elimination. However, if something can endure through the process, it can become a major product. Speaking of these major products, we also visited Calbee last year. Do you remember any major products from Calbee? How did they shape them?
They also continuously launch new products. The continuation of the entire company's life cycle actually relies on the emergence of major products time and again, which has brought it to its current state. Because actually, Calbee might be more familiar to everyone as the brand to buy the Jaga Pokuru as a souvenir in Japan. But initially, they didn't start with Jaga Pokuru. For example, they initially had their shrimp chips, and later on they developed products like cereal and their potato sticks. A product itself, or even if it is a major hit, has an objective life cycle. That is, once you've penetrated the market and reached the people you need to, each leap in the company's growth relies on a major product to sustain the company's life and to add to its revenue. But this doesn't mean I only focus on major products, because in fact, the frequency of launching new ones each year is very high. Yes, right, because they actually have a very close collaboration with Japanese convenience stores, and those stores are very competitive, requiring them to always provide new products. These products are essentially to ensure that there is a substantial base for major products to emerge later. With such a large base, they can to some extent ensure that there are many successful products. It's about not overly emphasizing new launches or individual products. I think this is a very important insight that these Japanese brand companies have given me.
I feel the same way as you. When we mention Suntory, for example, their oolong tea or Calbee's Jagariko, these products that seem so commonplace today are indeed the result of such a large probability. For instance, if we consider a probability of 3 in 1,000, these products that are still in development today have truly emerged from being eliminated among thousands of other products. Yes, so they are extremely valuable. A major product is not a one-time success. Yes. Instead, we have learned that once a major product occupies the shelf and captures the consumer's mind, it continues to iterate. They continue to conduct research, iterate, and update the product, including the product itself and its advertising.
Yes.
Right? Marketing. Promotion and marketing are what can turn a major product from a hit into an evergreen product.
Yes.
I think this point is...
Yes, because I remember that Suntory's Mr. Saito actually mentioned a ratio saying that everyone is balancing between old and new products and how much effort should be invested. Mr. Sato's point is that dedicating 30% of the effort means nurturing the next potential product, while the remaining 70% of resources and effort are invested in traditional hit products. Whether it's the content, packaging, marketing, or promotion, they have made new advancements in each step under the new era's context. This is how they can gradually extend the life cycle of their best-selling products.
Yes. And I remember being deeply impressed when you said that, of course, you can learn from us how we succeeded, but you should actually learn more from how we failed. Right? Because it's best if others pay the tuition fees so we can increase our chances of success. So developing a good product, one that we see as having long-term potential, is indeed a very challenging task. Yes, indeed. This is something that, whether it was during our last visit to Calbee or this time to Suntory, we all know that being able to create such a product, which we already refer to as a national brand or national product, is a truly remarkable achievement. But in recent years, there has been another trend, which is the retailers. The capabilities of retailers have been continuously strengthening, and retailers like the new generation, for example, like 7-Eleven, which has been very successful in Japan in recent years. This type of convenience store format, they are very familiar with consumers, and they have a consumer-centric approach. One of the key factors for their success is the launch of many excellent private label products, right? This time, we specifically made an effort to invite a person in charge of 7-Eleven's private label product development. So, in your course with him, what did you learn?
I think because we just talked about brands and then transitioned to the process of private label brands. Actually, I have a particularly deep impression of this perspective, which is the difference between PB, private brand products, and what we call NB, national brand products. Because NB products are generally assumed to be aimed at a national audience, right? Then I might be targeting a specific national audience, and this product will likely have a target profile. As for the development of PB products, it's actually about where the starting point is. This starting point is essentially based on consumer needs. So how do PB products define these consumer needs? It's actually the profile of the audience coming to my store. Compared to regular NB products, I can more accurately pinpoint the exact customer group I'm targeting, which allows me to develop products more specifically for them. And from the perspective of results, or from a standard perspective, I have a deep impression. I think over the past 2 years, there has been a lot of discussion in the domestic retail sector about what exactly should be developed into PB products.
Yes.
There are many viewpoints, such as turning the most profitable items into PB products. I take the money from the brand,
kick it out.
Yes, and bring it to myself. Then otherwise, what is the purpose of developing this PB? Compare prices with brand manufacturers, right? Directly place a product priced at 60% of the original next to it, right? And increase my... Actually, this is the simplest way. Sales, yes. Just develop it right next to you. On the contrary, I think this time, 7-Eleven gave me some answers on what kind of products should be developed into PB. I remember he mentioned 3 criteria. The first criterion is that the specifications of the NB manufacturer do not fit the audience I am targeting. I think this just reflects the principle mentioned earlier, which is that the development of PB products is actually aimed at a smaller audience. Coming to my store, what are their habits like? For example, NB manufacturers, when facing consumers nationwide, might offer a large package of laundry detergent. Because it's convenient for stocking up at home or similar purposes, making it easier for you to buy and take home. But the customers coming to my store may not necessarily need such a large package. They need something convenient. Since NB doesn't develop products like mine, I develop a small-size PB product to meet their needs, which is based on consumer demand. I think the second principle is that if NB competition is too fierce, and I can't make money from those products, that's quite normal, right? It's like
Every retailer uses it to engage in price war.
Yes. They all use it for price wars, especially in areas like beverages and drinks where competition is quite fierce, right? So I really can't make much money from brand manufacturers, so I launch a high-quality product myself to extend my profit chain. I think that's also a very natural thing to do. I think the third point is also very interesting. It talks about when NB products can't meet the frequency of new arrivals at 7-Eleven. In a sense, it's also to serve the needs of consumers. For example, if an NB product launches a particularly delicious ice cream, they might say that this NB product is really well made, but the ice cream can easily become cloying. And if it does, consumers might stop eating it. So I develop a PB to meet the consumer's need for something new. So actually, the starting point for everything is always based on the profile of the consumers who come to my store and their needs.
This point also left a very deep impression on me because when we used to create PB as retailers, I was also at JD.com, leading the initiative to develop JD's own brand, like Jingzhao. Actually, if you asked us, we would often say we wanted to increase some revenue, right? Or I want to increase profits, which is understandable. However, I think this time 7-Eleven has explained the principle and function of PB very clearly, which is actually consumer-oriented. And they put it directly, saying that I serve this specific customer group, which is equivalent to the needs of my private domain users. NB products are the ones that circulate through all our channels. And in the end, their development needs to consider all aspects, right? There are large supermarkets, as well as online and offline stores, and small shops. If you want to cover everything, it might not necessarily meet my needs at specific times. Especially as you mentioned earlier, a large supermarket might cater more to what a convenience store like mine wants to use, which could have differences in specifications, packaging, and usage methods. This really enlightened me, because we used to think that those who have been building brands for decades are definitely the experts here. Would a retailer or consumer who sells goods, including everything else, think you're professional? Why should they? But today, perhaps from this point, I feel it gave me a pretty good reason, which is that I also start from the consumer's perspective. So it's no wonder that 7-Eleven's private label is so large. And because of its food segment, the private label already accounts for a significant proportion of its total revenue, and it has even become Japan's largest food company. All right, we also know this, saying that 7-Eleven is impressive, and you have the opportunity to develop private label products. So what might the teacher have talked about this time? How do they specifically go about developing such products?
I always felt that there wasn't a good theory or conclusion about what product development really is, because many people think that product development is a creativity-driven thing, like having an idea and then figuring out how to implement it. But in reality, you'll find that within 7-Eleven, the development of private label products is actually a very granular process management task. 7-Eleven is quite unique because although it operates convenience stores and connects with manufacturers in the industry, it doesn't own any factories. It acts as a connector within the industry, and its development of private label products leverages its position in the supply chain to mobilize upstream resources. The source of this definitely starts from consumer demand. However, in terms of actual product planning, it follows the logic of what we call the 52-week MD, predicting consumer behavior for each week and collaborating with manufacturers to plan 1 to 2 years in advance. Because in reality, when we develop PB, private brand products, a problem we face domestically is that when I want to launch a PB product, I temporarily find an upstream supplier. The upstream supplier then says, if you need it so urgently, I can't give you a good price, nor can I offer customization, right? From 7-Eleven's perspective, they might plan the product roughly 1 or even 2 years in advance, then find the corresponding upstream manufacturers and communicate with them about the product development schedule and the requirements they can meet. For example, when developing coffee, they would consider the coffee beans, coffee machines, and roasting, right? Everyone involved in the value chain is brought in. The next step is to set the pricing for each product. In terms of pricing, they work backwards from the cost to determine the most optimal price from a full chain perspective, identifying what price is best suited for sales within their channel. I remember a very interesting example that left a deep impression on me. It illustrates how they concretely develop their private label products based on consumer needs. For instance, they create a 52-week MD calendar for the development of their private label products. Each week on this calendar details consumer activities, and for each category, they decide what kind of products to develop to match these consumer activities. For example, from the end of March to the end of April, it might be the financial reporting season in Japan. During this time, as a corporate worker, there might be more overtime work, so they might develop more seasonal bento products to cater to this need. So in fact, they can organically link and integrate consumer needs with their product development. The second point is that their collaboration with manufacturers is also very tight. An interesting aspect is whether the people in the supply chain are part of a chain-like development structure or a round-table development structure. This might sound a bit complex. In the past, when developing a product, people would look up the chain step by step. For example, if I want to develop a product like coffee, I might look for coffee beans. But it's just a single coffee bean supplier. If this supplier wants to do roasting and import raw beans, they have to look further up the chain for their upstream sources. But 7-Eleven deconstructed the entire production chain. I didn't just find the coffee bean roaster. I brought everyone involved in the coffee bean process, including those responsible for peeling, washing, and all other steps, to the same table. In this way, everyone in each industry can elevate their small actions to the highest level during music tactics, avoiding many issues where each person has their own small agenda during development. Ultimately, this ensures that the production body is not compromised in terms of quality or price.
We actually have three core functions: a headquarters for business development, an operations headquarters, and one for social engagement aspect. In the product headquarters, initially, we definitely build chains. We believe that strong business development is crucial to open stores, and operations can help people manage their business. Align for efficiency. Key roles: business, operations, product. The long-term driver of 7-Eleven's growth is actually the product, meaning the product is my core. Moreover, the real profit is built through the product. This is the first point he mentioned. And within this core of the product, the most important role is the MD, right? But actually, what we refer to in English as the merchant designer is how you go about product selection. Today, internally, they categorize all these products. For example, 7-Eleven might have around 2,500 to 3,000 products in the store. They further divide them into medium and small categories, assigning them to such MDs. Within each category, they plan which will use NB, brand products, and which can use PB products. After making these plans and organizing the entire product lineup, what I present to the consumer can best meet their needs.
I think this is actually a bit different from the domestic approach, because in China, I've encountered many retailers who turn PB into a separate department, or perhaps PB is just handled by a single person at 7-Eleven. It's quite unique in that we use a category structure. Categories actually cater to consumer scenarios, and some scenarios might be satisfied with NB products, while others might be fulfilled with PB products. So their MD actually corresponds to a category MD. In this category, the MD manages both NB and PB to create the best product mix for consumers.
Last year, we learned about something called the Rice Alliance, where Rice refers to retailers.
Yes.
It's actually the retailers taking the lead, collaborating with manufacturers to develop products. It requires many people across the entire supply chain to work together to resolve various aspects of the product and come up with a solution. What insights do you think this might offer to the many retailers in our country who are also looking to explore this?
In our country, when people talk about PB, the first thing they think of is whether your manufacturer is a white label manufacturer. That is, whether these non-brand people, and then you just find a small factory to make a private label for you. But in Japan, the so-called Seihan Alliance, many of the upstream manufacturers are actually big Japanese brands. For example, the manufacturing might be done by Ajinomoto, Meiji, and even these brand companies might invest in factories like 7-Eleven. So actually, the level and standard of their Seihan Alliance in manufacturing is very high. I think that the current Seihan Alliance of 7-Eleven in Japan is clearly defined primarily by 7-Eleven, with upstream development as a secondary focus. However, I think there is a difference domestically. Our own MD talent, including the product development system, is still in the growth phase. At this time, our Seihan Alliance really needs to leverage the capabilities of upstream brand manufacturers. After all, they have been deeply involved in a category for many years. They have their own ideas about product manufacturing, development, and even packaging specifications and pricing, but they might just not be as close to the consumers. So actually, domestically, I think it might be a different kind of combination. That is to say, professional knowledge may still need to come from brand manufacturers, but consumer needs and insights might still require efforts from retailers.
Yes, after listening, I also felt that when he talked about 712, it seemed like the MD team should have several thousand people.
The MD team is about 100 people.
100 people.
Yes.
Actually, in retail, there's no doubt that China is very, very lacking in talent in this area. However, as our retailers begin to realize this, I believe more professionals in this field will be developed. Just like in recent years, why everyone admires Sam's Club for being impressive and says their products are good is because Sam's Club has spent just over 10 to 20 years heavily investing in MD work to develop great products, which today forms its moat. Truly producing an excellent product is actually very, very challenging. Domestically, there might have been a lack of product strength before, so everyone has been using channel strength and brand strength to compensate. Therefore, we believe that the new generation may still need to make greater improvements in product strength, especially those e-commerce retailers who are closest to and understand users very well. They actually have a huge advantage in directly developing products. So from this perspective, I am quite optimistic. I believe that China's product capabilities will have the opportunity to reach a higher level in the future. So as we mentioned earlier, the first major module we learned in Japan this time is that the secret to good products lies in product development. Another thing is that during last year's visit, I was very surprised by why many Japanese products are both good and cheap. This time, we also had the opportunity to learn the secret behind these good products being low priced. Two companies shared their insights brilliantly. One is Saizeriya, and the other is Kobe Bussan's business supermarket. Could you share your impressions from this experience?
I think my takeaway this time is that if I were to sum it up in one crucial sentence, it would be that selling products with high quality and low price is not a matter of willingness, but absolutely a matter of capability. It's a matter of capability. Yes, and if we compare it to the domestic market, everyone is talking about the price competition. Essentially, if you haven't changed the cost structure of a product, you're merely adjusting your own profit margins and the brand's profit margins. So without a fundamental change in the product, low prices require design and manufacturing capabilities to support them. Then there are a few small examples here. For instance, in Japan at Saizeriya, you can have a very hearty Italian meal for just over 30 yuan per person, which is considered a very economical and affordable option. Behind this, they have actually done a lot in terms of manufacturing and operations to keep their operating and manufacturing costs as low as possible. This includes vertical integration, where they have designed many central factories and central kitchens. Their entire supply chain system is divided into two parts. The first part is more like a central kitchen, which essentially moves more operational steps from the store to the central kitchen, which is relatively closer to the store. The other type is large manufacturing plants, which are likely closer to the source of raw materials. These plants ensure low costs and the stability of product supply. For example, they have a very popular Milanese-style rice dish, which might use a large amount of dairy or dairy products. So they actually set up a manufacturing plant directly in Australia to achieve low costs. Additionally, in the central factory, they have implemented a lot of designs, like in the central kitchen, where they have designed many things. For instance, they have a type of tomato. And regarding this tomato, it has a great taste. Initially, they used an original variety from Europe, which tasted very good. However, after cutting, it releases juice, so it couldn't be processed on a large scale in the central factory and had to be cut at the front-end stores. Then they thought, hey, this isn't working, the efficiency is too low. Yes, at that time, they actually set up a system to transfer as many standardized actions as possible to the factory. So they developed a variety of tomato that, although slightly inferior in taste, could be processed in the central factory, thus completing the entire design. So in fact, this entire low cost and manufacturing design is actually the source of achieving low prices.
In fact, good quality at a low price is everyone's wish, right? But the core is that you must have the corresponding capability, which is the ability to operate at low cost. I think what impressed me the most is how they balance what exactly consumers can get. One thing that still surprised me is that when he was thinking about positioning himself, he considered himself as someone running a restaurant. However, his core business philosophy, the first point, is that the product should be reassuring but not taste bad. He doesn't say it has to be delicious, he says it shouldn't taste bad. His second point is that the service environment should not make people feel unpleasant. We often say we want to provide users with a pleasant experience, a perfect experience. But he talks about not being unpleasant, which seems contrary to our common sense. It feels like you're not addressing the main needs of the consumers. However, while it makes consumers give up these values, it offers them the greatest benefit by allowing me to operate at low cost. My low-cost operation is reflected in my low final investment, high per capita production efficiency, high area production efficiency, and savings in all factors, which will all be reflected in low prices. So it actually provides a huge value replacement for consumers. In fact, it also reveals many of the secrets behind the operation of our fast food restaurants. For example, I remember he mentioned that you need to let them use it. He said that in these fast food restaurants, like at Saizeriya, the so-called pasta you eat might be prepared by a part-time college student who usually doesn't cook at home. If he can operate it like this, it means that in our back-end factory, we must achieve a very high level of product preparation and completion for him to accomplish all this. He also mentioned that in Japan today, there are quite a few part-time workers, many of whom are elderly grandfathers and grandmothers, so they make the trays and other items lighter, reducing the likelihood of injuries. He even changed the wine glasses in an Italian restaurant from glass to PET, which possibly reduced the breakage rate and the extent of injuries. Moreover, he mentioned that while it seems like we are running a restaurant, more importantly, I have to be in manufacturing. In other words, I have to engage in primary, secondary, and tertiary industries simultaneously. Only then can fast food or large-scale dining truly achieve being both good and affordable and eventually expand to a large scale.
I think this concept of the sixth industry is not only mentioned by Saizeriya. Actually, when we later visited the Kobe Bussan business supermarket, they also emphasized that they are a sixth industry company. The sixth industry is a combination of primary, secondary, and tertiary industries. Yes, when combined, it forms a sixth industry company. Yes, actually, last year we also visited a Kobe Bussan store. And this store is actually a high sales store with an annual output of about 25 to 30 million. Now, at that time, I was particularly impressed by the fact that they were selling 1,000 ml of UCC coffee for 88 yen, which is about 4 yuan. I said, wow.
I was stunned entering a store under Kobe Bussan's business supermarket. It's all wow everywhere. The environment isn't great, but the prices are astonishing.
Yes. I was particularly impressed by his first sentence at the opening. He said, "We are a factory operation." He didn't define himself as a retail store. Instead, he saw himself more as a manufacturing entity. So he emphasized that they are a sixth industry company, meaning they handle both retail and manufacturing. Kobe Bussan actually positions itself from the retail end as what we previously called low price but unique.
Low price but unique.
Low price but unique. They own about 20 factories themselves within Japan. What's very interesting is that by relying on their own factories, they can produce items that are low in price, but cannot be produced through other channels. At the time, I tasted ryokan packaged in milk cartons and cheese ice cream in tofu boxes on site. These products were actually developed by the factories they acquired to maximize the utilization of these factories' production capacities. Another quite interesting point is that with these factories, the usual logic is to acquire only the best factories. right? Yes, but their acquisition standard is that they only acquire factories that are already bankrupt or on the verge of bankruptcy. In fact, Kobe Bussan, as a company that operates factories, actually has enough manufacturing know-how to use its expertise to increase the capacity utilization of these factories. This allows them to achieve low-cost production of goods, ultimately providing consumers with unique products that are both good and affordable.
You can also see from their financial reports that they give these franchisees about an 11% gross margin, which they keep. They keep 11% for themselves, they add 11% for themselves, and from this 11% gross margin, they can generate a net profit margin of 4 to 5%, which is quite impressive. The franchisees who typically get these products might add another 17 or 20% to their purchase price before selling to consumers. At that time, their store could achieve annual sales revenue of 20 to 30 million RMB, with a net profit margin of about 2 to 3%. So for the franchisees, it's a good business that can break even in 18 to 24 months. In other words, from the point of manufacturing at the factory, they only add a gross margin of over 30% before selling to consumers, while others might add 50, 70, 80% or even higher margins. So this is what I think is the most unique aspect of Kobe Bussan. And I can sense a common characteristic in these two companies, which is that they truly have low prices ingrained in their DNA. It's in their bones. Today, we often see domestically, whether it's brand owners, for example, they tend to prefer the newest factories, the largest factories, right? These factories with particularly high standards certainly help improve the quality of Chinese products today. However, from another perspective, these investments are also reflected in the cost of goods that consumers have to pay, how to better plan these investments, achieve more efficiency savings in this area, and ultimately provide consumers with a price advantage is still a very tangible benefit. So from this learning experience with the two companies, Saizeriya and Kobe Bussan, I truly feel that if I were to sum up the secret to low prices in one word, it would be factories, factories. In manufacturing, we often talk about how to improve efficiency in the service industry, like opening restaurants or working in retail. But truly, if you want to make something both good and cheap, it's actually the manufacturing world that holds the key. I truly feel that the secret to low prices, if I were to sum it up in one word, is factory. We work in retail, but if we truly want to make something both good and cheap, manufacturing is a core in this. It is about creating value, acting as a converter. However, a significant core here is that it acts as a value converter. Achieving high-quality factories and controlling input-output elevates product quality and price balance. I believe that our Chinese enterprises still have a lot to learn and explore further. If you were to summarize, for example, recommend to today's entrepreneurs that we should visit Japan more often and learn from their strengths, how would you introduce to everyone why we should go to Japan, what to learn, and most importantly, how to apply it to change your business?
I think there are two important points, which we actually mentioned at the beginning of this discussion. Learning from Japan is like using a stone from another mountain, but don't carve a boat to mark the sword. Because there are indeed many objective differences, including, for example, Japan's distribution structure and consumption situation, which actually differ significantly from our wealth gap and some of our distribution structures. That is to say, we definitely need to learn, but what we are learning is the methodology, not copying it one-to-one. It is actually, after many years of continuous iteration, that a very precise process system and talent structure support have been formed. And whether from the perspective of talent or from the perspective of processes, we are actually in the process of forming this. I think a more realistic situation is that we learn their methodology and then find ways to make some adjustments within our own system. For example, as we just mentioned, the 52-week MD is something that everyone in Japanese distribution companies considers a routine and essential task. When I first went there, I also thought this was an impressive methodology, so I thought, why not bring it back and implement it, right? You'll find that our current processes and talent may not support it, so we can't do the 52-week plan. Instead, we can start with a monthly plan. Yes, this involves applying our own cultural practices, and through these localized applications, we can train our team, build our mechanisms, and enhance our insights into consumers. On one hand, we need to observe their phenomena, understand the principles behind them, and comprehend their methodologies. At the same time, we must find the rhythm and application methods that best suit us.
In the past few years, Chicheng has spent quite a bit of time on business, philosophy, and operations in Japan. We've also taken many founders to Japan for visits and learning. My personal feeling is that Japan is still a place worth learning from. This is because during Japan's so-called lost 30 years, there has been a lot of accumulation. In this environment, the evolution of many businesses, along with the logic and outcomes of their evolution, actually provides us with a lot of insights, especially in recent years as China has faced some downturns in consumption and pressure. When we look for reference solutions, Japan is undoubtedly a valuable model from which we can learn. So our first step is for entrepreneurs to go out, especially to experience it firsthand at the location. When everyone arrives at the factories, at these stores, and sees these Japanese products that are both good and cheap, and how Japan's retail industry is both diverse and highly attractive, it gives everyone an intuitive feeling. It suggests that if we previously focused solely on quality or just on price, or relied on one or two strategies, we might find that after experiencing the more challenging environment of the last 30 years, these approaches are not entirely sufficient to handle such competition. Therefore, you might need to incorporate multiple strategies simultaneously. I call this the very first stage, where everyone is significantly impacted and begins to gradually accept that we might also face a similar challenging economic environment, inevitably forcing us to operate in this particular way. This is indeed a gain. In the second stage, I think it becomes a question of, oh, I know they are very impressive, but what exactly is the principle behind it? Private brands make 7-Eleven extremely competitive and unique. But how did you develop your private brand? I know we need to develop a private brand. Later, we delved into it and realized, oh, it's because the logic behind private brand development involves an MD mechanism and a procurement alliance, a round table type of development partnership. This tool and principle is called the 52-week MD. All right, let's first understand the capabilities behind the business results we want. Just like this time, we went to learn many such secrets. Today, the secret to low prices might be in the factory. And when we uncover these secrets, they are actually their true core competitiveness. At least we have a blueprint, a direction to strive towards. I believe that given time, these companies and entrepreneurs will all learn. The third aspect, I feel, is how we can better both learn from and utilize internal mechanisms to implement it. In the past year or two, everyone has been going to Japan to attend lectures and listen to experts. I think moving forward, we at Chicheng also want to invite more experts to come to China so they can provide deeper and more thorough insights. We can ask questions, and the questions can be more detailed. The last point, which also left a deep impression on me, is that many Japanese companies actually mention concepts like lean. You could say how the PDCA cycle is applied in different companies.
In fact, this includes what we might have just discussed, including the product development processes. If you break it down, it's essentially all part of the PDCA cycle. First, everyone needs to plan, then make a good plan, then do the execution. After executing, you check, then review, and after reviewing, take action again, which means to redo the execution and implementation. Essentially, every time you complete this cycle, you increase your chances of success by one step. So even if product development today is a game of probabilities, I can still, through continuous PDCA cycles, achieve a higher level more when compared to other progress stacks. Yes. So actually, this lean and improvement mindset, perhaps previously what we heard more about it. It came from Toyota, from the manufacturing industry. but now it is very commonly applied in many areas within Japanese companies.
I also feel that this is a very unique methodology of Japanese companies, and it suits their national character very well. In China today, we might often do things in a top-down manner, planning how to develop a good product from above, or making significant investments in operations in certain areas. However, I think they emphasize a bottom-up approach, continuously implementing the PDCA cycle at every stage, making constant improvements step by step. So I believe we have summarized a lot from this trip to Japan, and we have gained a lot each time. Moving forward, I am confident that we will organize more trips, whether to visit and learn in Japan, or to invite more Japanese experts and industry people for exchanges. Method, little by little, the research on Japan's treasures is quite unique for us, and we still hope to be able to share my gains and accumulations with more people. Sharing the gains and accumulations with more people, the probability of success